Little Nightmares. Recently I played Little Nightmares, a fantastic 2D platform stealth action horror game where no dialogue is used whatsoever, but it's focused more on atmosphere and invoking feelings with the actual character 6. Spoilers ahead from now, I would proceed at your own caution. So 6 wakes up in a briefcase on the mysterious Maw, a pleasure cruise vessel. She wakes up with nothing more than a lighter, no explanation as to how she got there, and then just continues with the story in game. The Maw is a floating submersible vessel. The game takes place over 5 chapters. At the start of the game, you're met with horrible creatures and denizens off the Maw, the first one being the janitor. The beginning level is the prison in which 6 has to navigate the area stealthily to avoid the janitor and any of the other traps set up in the Maw. The game initially is terrifying as you're not really sure what you're supposed to do or where you're supposed to go, invoking kind of just a little bit of dread and fear every time you see the janitor. Misshapen and with protruding arms, he's kind of horrifying, similar to a disgusting Studio Ghibli character. The chapters flow together quite nicely, and they quickly move from section to section, getting more advanced mechanics and increasing difficulty as you move from chapter to chapter is the fun and challenging part of this game. The atmosphere and music of this game is the best part. Intense sequences where you're spontaneously running for your life are one of the highlights of this game. On the fly quick thinking is 100% necessary to survive. The traps were challenging, but initially, as you tried to discover what you can and can't do in this world. There were many times in this game you broke out in fear and panic as just spontaneous enemies appear out of nowhere and begin chasing you. And the game has no dialogue options or any help, or there's actually literally nothing on screen telling you what or how or when you're supposed to do things, so it just leaves it up to your own imagination and ingenuity. The game is quite dark. It comes across as it should be kind of like a twisted Studio Ghibli film, but it's actually quite scary at times. But I found just the theme and environment and atmosphere and music specifically was just one of the high points of playing this game. It just encouraged kind of like this grandiose, overwhelming environment that you didn't know what you were doing or where you were, but you wanted to continue on and keep going forward to find out what was happening. The lack of dialogue leaves the player to basically invent or come up with a story for this game. Whether or not 6 is in fact good or bad is completely up to interpretation, as the game purposefully leaves that ambiguous. In the third level, the kitchens, you meet the disgusting and disfigured looking twin chefs as they go about their busy business preparing unrecognizable meats for their customers. The design of these characters were completely grotesque, and I found that just amazing. I loved it. The kitchen hand achievement was possibly the hardest thing for me to do in this game. It involved sneakily throwing 3 ingredients into the pot before the chefs could notice you and kill you. You try and slip past and maneuver yourself around this environment to avoid becoming their next meal. Timing played a key role in playing this game, as in one mistake and you'd be dead completely. Some of the parts were extremely exhilarating, as like you did not know what you were supposed to do, but you're just going on complete intuition, figuring out what was the best course of action and when and not to do things, and what was the best way to set up every situation so you could escape properly. Trying to do stuff on first chances were extremely rare, but the game, action set pieces, and just characters and environment together, all of those elements together just really put the game like really high up on a list of just incredible experiences, not just like in terms of visual, but immerse you into the character of Six as she is trying to just struggle through this world and survive. As the game continues on, you finally figure out, if it wasn't noticeable at the beginning of the rocking of the environment back and forth, that you are in fact on a submarine ship called the Maw, which is essentially, from my interpretation, is like a pleasure cruise liner that focuses on indulgences for citizens in the world to experience. The majority, the biggest theme in the game is gluttony and hunger, and food plays a big role in that. And it just looked like this was a pleasure cruise for people to basically come onto the Maw and enjoy themselves and consume as much as possible. Run by the mysterious lady that you rarely see at the beginning of the game. The citizens, or people that are on board the ship, are absolutely beautifully disgusting, if that makes sense. The game reminds me completely so much of Spirited Away, but similar to the customers in the bathhouse, the people that take part in the Maw's activities are absolutely horrible and completely disgusting and gluttonous, and it was fantastic. Hunger plays like the biggest role in this game, and constant consuming is important. Even Six feels hunger throughout the experience, but in my opinion, I think children are a delicacy in this world. Dozens of children were stored in the containers, in the prison, in the depths of the Maw, and as soon as the customers in the food hall see Six, they're completely infatuated by it and go into a frenzy where they go to any lengths to try and eat her. This level was probably the most exciting and kind of strange and weird, a multitude of emotions as you just kind of trying to escape this blabbering tidal wave of flesh and mouth, as like you don't really know where you're supposed to go or how you're supposed to get out of this situation. But the game just provides kind of a kind of manageable and enjoyable kind of, just the environment and these setups were absolutely fantastic to get into. So in this world, children are a delicacy to be consumed, I guess. So as the game came to a close, you stumble upon the lady's apartment. At initial concept, you're like, okay, finally, this might be a bit of rest from just the crazy Maw. But then it actually becomes probably the most terrifying sneaking level probably in the game. Nothing is really known about the lady like everything else in this game. But she runs the ship. And is terrifying. The game gets darker at this point as you're now running from like spectral lady as she just chases you throughout the level. Exhausted. All you can just do is just complete run to... As you get to the end of the line, you figure she's been staring at mirrors, and you find the one mirror that, well, the one mirror that hasn't been broken is her weakness. The final battle is fairly simple. Just run to the lighted areas, then reflect the light into the lady's direction to finally defeat her. There's a couple of close calls, but once I kind of nailed down where the spotlight was going to be next, it's just a matter of just time and repetition. Then finally, Six defeated her and goes in for the kill. Once she absorbed the power, she basically used that, became confident, and no longer needed to sneak but just walk through the dining hall, continuing to absorb the life force of other creatures on the mall until she was able to escape. And then once escaped, waited for the vessel to continue, and then that's where the game ends. At the end of the game, Six escapes the maw that's still submerged, and then you hear the siren in the distance of the ship returning. So the game is left very openly ambiguous for a reason, that the player can kind of overlap their interpretation and meaning, as in, is Six a protagonist or antagonist? Is she good or bad? And it's still kind of hard to tell. Hopefully in the sequel coming out next year, it'll kind of highlight more, but again, I kind of love the fact that it is completely left up to interpretation. Just know that hunger, as I was saying, plays a big deal in this game. Constantly in each chapter, Six just becomes ravenous and needs to feed on something, whether it be bread or meat or rat or anything. Just constant this need for food, similar to the customers in the fourth level. As the game continues, Six requires more and more food to survive, and each subsequent chapter requires bigger and bigger prey to feed on in order to sustain herself, until ultimately at the end of the game, Six becomes powerful and absorbs the power of the lady. Now, Six, similar to the other children, they were locked up in the prison at the beginning of the game, and Six escaped. Now, whether Six and the other children in the world are not allowed to feed and are just supposed to be consumed by people, like in the dining hall. As the game continues on, Six hunger becomes more insatiable, and she constantly needs bigger food. I suppose that the best part of the game is just the complete ambiguity of the concept, and again, it's up to the person to kind of figure out what is and what isn't the point of this game. Whether or not Six is evil, it doesn't matter really. It's just overall a great game to play. Anyway, thank you for watching the video. Bye bye.